My mom said, "Don't worry, your father and I are leaving everything to you." But after her funeral, I opened the will and saw a stranger's name. The thing about promises is, they sound like truth until life demands receipts. I remember her saying it like she was handing me the keys to the world. She had this soft voice when she meant something deeply, not her usual sing-songy tone she used for church friends or neighbors. This was her real voice, the one she saved for kitchen table confessions and late-night truth sessions. I was 29, 2 years after Dad passed, and Mom had just beaten her second bout of breast cancer. We were sitting on the porch watching thunderclouds gather over the hills. "When the time comes," she said, folding her hands like she was trying to steady her soul, "don't worry. Your father and I talked about it. Everything. The house, the land, the accounts, it's all yours." I laughed, nervously. I didn't want to think about her dying, not then. But something in her eyes told me I should listen. So I did, and I held on to that moment like an anchor. For years, it kept me grounded. Even when her health declined again. Even when my younger brother Eric vanished off the map, no calls, no visits, just postcards from New Mexico, and then silence. Even when I moved back home to take care of her full-time, quitting my job, losing my apartment, losing myself, I told myself it was worth it. That she'd taken care of me when I was too young to understand what sacrifice meant, and now it was my turn. Until the funeral, it was quiet. Just a few neighbors, a cousin from Dad's side, and me. Eric didn't show. Not that I expected him to. He hadn't seen her in nearly 7 years. Never replied to my calls. Never visited even when I told him she might not make it past winter. After the service, I returned to the house. Our house. The house I grew up in, painted every 5 years, fixed after the storm in '09, shoveled out of snow every damn February. There was an envelope on the dining table. To Caleb, it read in her careful cursive. Inside was the will. Simple, direct, clear. Only it wasn't. Because the name listed as the primary beneficiary wasn't mine. Or Eric's. It was someone named Daniel Everett. No explanation. No footnotes. Just his name. He was to inherit the house, the land, the savings account, and the retirement fund. I stared at that name like it had stolen the air from the room. Who the hell is Daniel Everett? I flipped through every page, hoping it was a typo, a placeholder, a mistake. But it wasn't. Her signature was there. Dated. Notarized. Recent. I remember just sitting there, the late afternoon light cutting across the wood floors, dust floating like ghosts. I called her lawyer, a soft-spoken woman named Teresa who remembered me instantly. "It was your mother's decision," she said, her voice like worn velvet. "She made the change about 14 months ago. She was lucid, rational, and insistent." "But who is he?" I asked. "Who is Daniel Everett?" She paused. "I can't disclose details beyond the will without her written consent, but I can tell you she was very clear about her wishes." My voice cracked. She told me it was all coming to me. Another pause. Then gently. "Sometimes, people carry secrets they don't know how to share." That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the house like it had betrayed me. Every photo on the wall, every drawer I opened, felt like it might hold a clue. I dug through her old files, the fireproof safe in the closet, even her knitting basket. Nothing. Not a single mention of Daniel Everett. But the next morning, the mystery got a name with a face. Because Daniel Everett knocked on the front door. And when I opened it, I was looking at a man who could have been my brother. He had my father's jawline. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the cautious eyes or the way he held his cap in both hands like he wasn't sure he had the right address. It was the jaw. Strong, squared, and unmistakably familiar. A blueprint I thought belonged only to my bloodline. I didn't say anything at first. Just stared, my mind scrambling to find a version of reality where this made sense. "Are you Caleb?" he asked. His voice was low, polite, like someone who'd been coached in manners but hadn't used them much lately. I nodded slowly. "I'm Daniel. Daniel Everett. I was told to come by after the funeral." I let that hang in the air a moment too long, then stepped aside. "You should come in." He stepped over the threshold like it might break beneath him, glanced around, taking in the living room, the fireplace, the old photographs on the wall. He paused a little too long at the picture of my parents on their wedding day. We sat across from each other at the dining table. The envelope, the will, still lay open between us. "You knew my mother?" I asked. He hesitated. "Yes. For the past 2 years. And she never mentioned you. Not once. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been bracing for this exact question. She asked me to keep things private. Said she wasn't ready for the rest of the family to know. Know what? That she gave everything to a stranger? His gaze dropped. I understand how this must feel. I didn't come here to fight. Just to talk. I wanted to scream. To flip the table and demand answers. But instead, I just leaned back and asked, so talk. Who are you? Really? Daniel looked me in the eye. His own were hazel, same as mine. I think I'm your brother. Silence. It was so still I could hear the old wall clock ticking like a metronome between us. I laughed, but it wasn't joy. It was confusion wrapped in disbelief. What are you talking about? My brother is Eric. He nodded slowly. I know. But your mom, our mom, told me the full story last year. My mother, biological, was someone your father had a brief relationship with before he married your mom. She gave me up for adoption. I didn't even know who my parents were until I started looking a few years ago. And you just found her? Found my mom. He nodded again. I tracked her down. Wrote a letter. I wasn't even sure she'd respond. But she did. Said she wanted to meet me. It was quiet at first. Visits. Emails. Then more. My heart was thudding in my chest like it wanted out. And she believed you? Just like that? He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside, a copy of a DNA test. Our father's name matched. 97% probability. Half-brothers. She had it confirmed, he said gently. I stared at the document, willing it to be fake. A prank. Anything but what it was. My mother knew. And she never told me. She let me care for her day and night while she kept this secret locked away. Let me believe the future was already written. Why didn't she tell me? I whispered. Daniel didn't answer. Because maybe he didn't know. Or maybe he did, and knew it wouldn't change a damn thing. I looked around the room. Every piece of furniture, every photo on the wall, suddenly unfamiliar. What else didn't I know? And what exactly had she meant when she said, your father and I talked about it? Because the man I knew would never have hidden this. At least, that's what I used to believe. But now I wasn't sure I knew either of them at all. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. That night, I wandered from room to room like a guest at a museum. I touched the banister Dad carved himself, stared at the water stains on the ceiling from the year the roof gave out. Everything had a memory, a meaning, a weight, and suddenly, all of it felt like it belonged to someone else. Maybe it never belonged to me at all. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face, heard his voice, saw that DNA test printed on office paper like it was just another receipt. The next morning, I found myself sitting at the edge of Mom's bed. Her scent still lingered on the pillows, lavender and old cedar. I opened her nightstand drawer, half expecting to find another secret tucked between crossword puzzles and cough drops. Instead, I found a photo. It was worn, folded so many times the creases were starting to fray. Two people stood in front of a blue Pontiac. My father, unmistakable, 20-something and cocky, his arm around a woman I didn't recognize. She had curly hair, dark eyes, and a half-smile that didn't reach her face. I flipped it over. Wendy and Mark. Spring '86. Wendy. That must have been Daniel's mother. I stared at the photo for a long time, trying to imagine that version of my father. Young, reckless, capable of starting a second life without a word. I thought about calling Eric. But what would I even say? Hey, guess what? Mom gave the house to a guy we didn't know existed until yesterday. Turns out we've got another brother. Surprise. Instead, I called Teresa, the lawyer. Is there a letter? I asked. She was quiet for a beat. Then, yes. Can I read it? She asked that it be given to you only after you met Daniel. I met him. Come by the office. I'll have it ready. The letter was in a cream envelope. Handwritten. 3 pages. Her voice flowed off the page like she was sitting right beside me. Caleb, if you're reading this, then everything has come out. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid you'd see me differently. And maybe you do. Maybe you should. Your father made mistakes. So did I. But one of the hardest truths I've had to live with is that we all carry pieces of the past we wish we could rewrite. I didn't know about Daniel until after your father died. He left a letter. A confession, really. I was so angry at first. But then I saw his picture. Saw your father's face staring back at me. I couldn't ignore it. Daniel didn't ask for anything. He just wanted to understand. And I saw something in him, Caleb. The same quiet hurt you carried when you were little. I saw how lost he was. And I thought, maybe giving him this home would give him something permanent. Something he never had. It doesn't mean I love you any less. God, if I could explain the pride I feel when I look at you. The way you stepped up when I got sick. The way you've always been steady, loyal. I should have told you. You deserve that. But I was a coward. And I hope, one day, you'll forgive me. Love. Mom. I don't know how long I sat in that chair. I just remember the ache in my chest, spreading like a bruise. It wasn't about the house. Or the will. It was about being left in the dark. About carrying someone else's silence like it was my job to be okay with it. That night, I drove out past the edge of town. To the cliffs where Dad used to take us fishing when we were kids. I sat on the hood of the truck, staring into the dark, and let the wind scream for me. I didn't have answers. I didn't even know what came next. But one thing was clear. Daniel Everett wasn't just a name in a will. He was blood. And like it or not, I had to decide what that meant now. I avoided the house for 3 days. Slept in the truck, showered at the YMCA, spent my days aimlessly drifting between coffee shops and the local library where I pretended to read. I just couldn't bring myself to cross that threshold again. Not yet. Daniel texted once. Just one line. I'm sorry. Let me know when you want to talk. I didn't reply. Not because I hated him, but because I didn't know how to make space for someone who shattered everything I thought I knew. Even if it wasn't his fault. On the 4th morning, I went back. The place smelled like dust and lavender. Still, I stood in the living room and let the silence fill me up. Then I did what I'd been putting off since the funeral. I called Eric. To my surprise, he picked up. Caleb, he said, groggy, like he hadn't spoken my name in months. Did something happen? Yeah, I said. You could say that. I told him everything. The will. Daniel. The letter. The photo. I heard him exhale, long and low. So that explains it, he muttered. Explains what? Why Mom stopped asking me to come home. Why she didn't seem surprised when I said I wouldn't visit. I thought she'd given up on me. But maybe she'd already replaced me. That hit like a sucker punch. Eric, it wasn't like that. She didn't replace us. She was trying to make things right. In her own way. You believe that. I don't know what I believe. I just know I'm tired. He didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, what are you going to do? No idea, I admitted. But I think we need to talk. All 3 of us. He let out a bitter laugh. A family reunion. Great. Maybe not family. But something. Closure. Whatever it is. I can't keep walking around pretending I'm not drowning. We agreed to meet the next day. I texted Daniel. Meet us at the house. Tomorrow. 4 p.m. He replied almost instantly. I'll be there. When the day came, I cleaned. Not just to tidy the place, but because it felt like preparing for a reckoning. I wanted the house to look like it did when things still made sense. Daniel arrived first. Wore a button-up shirt, nervous energy trailing behind him like smoke. He brought a pie. Of all things. Mom liked apple, he said quietly, placing it on the counter. Said it reminded her of fall. I nodded. Didn't speak. Just motioned to the living room. Eric showed up 20 minutes late, as expected. He hadn't changed a bit. Still carried that restless edge like he was always one step away from the exit. So, he said, eyeing Daniel. You're the ghost. Daniel stiffened. I didn't mean to replace anyone. You didn't, I cut in. This isn't about blame. We're all here because none of us got what we wanted. And maybe never will. Silence stretched between us. Why did you come here? Eric finally asked. You could have walked away. Daniel looked down at his hands. Because I didn't want to be a secret anymore. That sentence sat in the air like a confession. We all stared at each other, not sure what to do next. Mom lied to all of us, I said. But she also loved all of us. In different ways. That's what I keep coming back to. Eric snorted. Yeah, well, she had a funny way of showing it. So what now? Daniel asked. What do we do with all this? I looked at him. At Eric. At the house around us. I think we figure it out together. Daniel blinked. You mean share it? The house. I nodded. None of us asked for this. But none of us deserve to carry it alone either. Eric laughed. For real this time. You always were the peacekeeper. No, I said. I'm just tired of pretending blood only runs one way. And for the first time since the funeral, something inside me loosened. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the first crack of it. And that was something. We didn't solve everything that day. But we sat there for hours. Eric told stories I hadn't heard in years. About the time he ran off to L.A. to become a sound engineer and ended up washing dishes for 6 months before crawling back east. Daniel listened, genuinely curious, asking questions like he actually wanted to know us. Not just as brothers, as people. I watched them, these two men from different corners of my mother's world, and it felt like sitting in the wreckage of something holy. Not ruined, just unfinished. At one point, Daniel pulled a notebook from his backpack. I wrote some stuff down, he said. Things she told me. I didn't want to forget. He slid it across the table. I hesitated, then opened it. The pages were filled with Mom's phrases, quotes, even shopping lists. Memories in her voice. Some of it made me laugh. Some of it punched me in the gut. But what hit hardest was the way Daniel had clung to her words like someone collecting light in a jar. Proof she existed. That he wasn't imagining her love. She used to hum when she cooked, Daniel said quietly. Never the same tune twice. I nodded. Yeah. Said if she sang the same song, it meant she was stuck. Eric added, she made grilled cheese with mayo on the outside. Said it was her secret weapon. We all smiled. Small. Sad. It felt like we were piecing her back together, one memory at a time. Daniel finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. Are we really going to do this? Share the house? Eric and I looked at each other. He shrugged. I got no roots. Not anymore. If it keeps me grounded, maybe that's worth something. I don't know what it looks like, I admitted. But yeah, I think we try. Daniel exhaled, shoulders dropping like he'd been holding breath for weeks. We'll figure it out, I said. We owe her that much. That night, I stayed up late. After they left, I went room to room, touching things not to possess them, but to remember. Her blanket on the armchair. The chipped mug with the sunflower print. The old tin recipe box. All of it still hers. But now somehow also ours. I opened the notebook again. Read one last entry she must have said to him. Family isn't about how it starts. It's about who stays when the fire comes. I closed the book and stared out the window, the night humming with crickets and old ghosts. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was holding it all alone. And that, more than anything, felt like a beginning. Not the one I expected, but maybe the one I needed. It started small. An extra toothbrush in the upstairs bathroom. Daniel's duffel bag tucked in the hallway closet. Eric's records showing up in the living room again like they never left. Slowly, without really planning it, the house became lived in by all of us. It wasn't perfect. Daniel forgot to lock the shed one night, and raccoons got into the feed bins. Eric left dishes in the sink until mold started to bloom like some kind of science experiment. I snapped at both of them more than once. Old habits, deep grooves. But we were trying. That counted for something. We came up with a schedule. Chores, bills, maintenance. We even held a house meeting, which felt ridiculous until Daniel brought homemade biscuits and Eric actually showed up on time. I found myself laughing more than I expected. Not the polite chuckle you give out of obligation, but the kind that sneaks up on you. The kind you forget you missed. One night, after dinner, Daniel pulled out Mom's recipe box. He wanted to learn how to make her Sunday stew. You sure? I asked. That thing's basically held together with gravy and memory. Exactly, he said, smiling. We spread the cards across the counter, each one written in her looping cursive. Eric leaned over and pointed to one. This one, you remember this smell? Used to fill the whole damn house. We cooked together, fumbled through it, got the seasoning wrong, burnt the onions. But when we sat down to eat, it tasted like her. Like home. Daniel set a place for her at the table. Not out of ritual, just instinct. And none of us said a word about it. We ate in silence, each of us chewing more than just food. Later that week, I found a box in the attic labeled Caleb, for later. Inside were photos I'd never seen. Me as a baby, holding my dad's finger. My mom's notes in the margins. First laugh, April 14th. And tucked beneath it all, a letter. I hope one day you understand that secrets aren't always meant to hurt. Sometimes they're just what people think love looks like, even when they get it wrong. She'd written it years ago, before the cancer came back, before Daniel showed up, maybe even before she'd forgiven Dad for the letter he left behind. Reading it, I felt something inside me soften. I took the letter downstairs, left it on the coffee table, didn't say a word, just let them read it in their own time. That weekend, Eric offered to repaint the porch. Daniel trimmed the hedges. I fixed the squeaky gate. It wasn't about duty or penance. It was about building something together. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like a son cleaning up after ghosts. I felt like a man standing among brothers, finally starting the work of making this place ours. Not inherited. Claimed. It had been 2 months since the funeral when the knock came. I was in the shed, covered in sawdust and sweat, halfway through a birdhouse project Mom had started before the cancer took her strength. She'd drawn plans in a spiral notebook, big enough for cardinals, with a slanted roof and a perch made from an old spoon. I'd been working on it slowly, like finishing it meant saying goodbye for Rael. The knock wasn't urgent, just steady. 3 short raps. I wiped my hands, stepped outside. The woman on the porch was in her 60s. Gray sweater, dark jeans, eyes like wet ash. She held a manila envelope. "You're Caleb?" I nodded. She offered a small smile. "My name's Evelyn. I was Daniel's mother." My stomach twisted. She noticed. "Biological. I raised him." I nodded again, slower. "Would you like to come in?" She shook her head. "I won't stay. I just wanted to give you this." She handed me the envelope. Her fingers trembled. "It's letters," she said. "From Mark. Your father. He sent them to me, years ago, after Daniel was born. I never responded. But I kept them. I thought maybe. They belong with you now?" I stared at the envelope like it might burn through my hands. "Why now?" She looked past me at the house. "Because I saw the obituary. And I saw your names. And because grief has a way of opening doors we thought we'd locked forever." She turned to leave. "He was a good boy," she added. "Still is. Your mom." She gave him a piece of his story back. "That matters." Then she walked down the steps, slow and measured, and disappeared into a rusted sedan parked under the maple tree. I stood on the porch for a long time, envelope in hand, the birdhouse forgotten. Inside were 6 letters, dated from 1987 to 1992, each one a confession from my father. "Dear Wendy, I don't know if you'll ever read these, but I need to write them. I see him in my dreams sometimes. A little boy with your eyes and my laugh. I know I made mistakes. I was a coward. But I want you to know, I think about him every day." The letters changed over time. Grew softer. Less desperate. More honest. He talked about meeting my mom. About raising Eric and me. About regret. He deserves to know he wasn't unwanted. That he was never a secret to me. Only to the world. I cried reading them. Quiet, shaking sobs I hadn't felt since the night we buried Dad. That night, I gathered Eric and Daniel in the living room. Read the letters out loud. None of us spoke afterward. We just sat there, the silence so full it felt like music. Daniel leaned back, eyes wet. I never hated him. Not really. But I hated the hole he left. Eric nodded slowly. We had a dad. But we didn't know the man who wrote those. I folded the last letter carefully, placed it on the mantel beside Mom's recipe box. Family, I realized, wasn't just about blood or time. It was about telling the whole story, even the chapters that hurt. Especially those. Spring came late that year. The thaw rolled in slow, like the house itself was waking up after a long sleep. Crocuses poked through the soil behind the shed. The air held that sharp, electric smell, the one that made you believe things could begin again. We rebuilt the birdhouse together. Eric found Mom's old gardening gloves, the ones with the embroidered initials. Daniel unearthed a box of wind chimes from the garage, still wrapped in newspaper from 2004. We hung them near the porch. It didn't feel like restoration. It felt like translation, taking a language written in pain and turning it into something that could speak hope. I started keeping a journal, not because I needed to vent, but because I didn't want to forget. Not this time. Not these pieces. Sometimes I'd catch Daniel reading it over my shoulder. He never asked. But one evening, he handed me a sketch. It was Mom, sitting in her rocking chair, head tilted just so, eyes closed. Peaceful. I did it from memory, he said. It's not perfect, but it was. Eric started staying longer. His stints at the house grew from weekends to weeks. He said the quiet helped him write music again. Said maybe he'd stick around for the summer. We didn't call it healing. We didn't need to. It just was. One night, we sat on the back porch with beers and blankets. A storm rolled in, sky grumbling above the trees. The same kind of night when Mom once promised me everything would be mine. I turned to Daniel. You still think about what it would have been like if you'd grown up here? He nodded slowly. Sometimes. But then I look around and think, maybe this was the better version. The one where we all earned it. Eric raised his bottle. To weird families. And unfinished stories. We clinked bottles, the sound swallowed by thunder. Later, After they'd gone inside, I stayed a while. Watched the rain start to fall. The wind chimes trembled. Not from the wind, but from memory. And something deeper. Love, maybe. The kind that doesn't ask for understanding. Just endurance. I looked out across the yard, wet grass glinting in the porch light, and whispered into the dark. We're still here, Mom. Just like you said. And for the first time since she left, I believed it. We weren't broken. We were becoming whole.